Today, we'll be linking 3 logistics models together for operations. We'll be considering a fictional farm share company that delivers produce boxes from farms to customers' homes. We will work with demand forecasting, shift scheduling, and vehicle routing. The output of each model will feed into the next as the input as we go from forecasting to shift scheduling and then vehicle routing. We'll start on the Marketplace page in the Next Move console. These are pre-built applications that you can get started with and then completely customize as needed. We will start with demand forecasting, so let's click into the OR Tools Demand Forecasting app, and you can see the details here. The goal of this app is to use lag regression to forecast demands for the next 28 days, and we will then use that forecast in our downstream models. We will click Clone App and create a new subscription app. We will give that app a name, and then we will click Clone App. So now we've successfully cloned that app, and you can see at the bottom here we have an API reference section for engaging with that app. And now let's take a look at actually running this app. So now let's click Run App. And once we click in, we can see that we can load a sample input. And what we will do is click on the large input. And you can see that this app takes in the input of time zone and demands based on historical demand data. Now we will go ahead and click Start Run to run our demand forecasting app. And we can see here that the run is queued. So I will give it one moment and then refresh here. And we can see that the run succeeded. We have our metadata, and at the top we'll click Results. Here we have an array of our forecasted demand. Our next step is to use this output as the input for our scheduling app. So we will navigate back to our Marketplace page on the left-hand navigation, and we are going to create a highs shift scheduling app from this Marketplace app. So just like before, we will go ahead and clone the app. We will add a name, and then we'll click Create App. Wonderful, the app was created successfully, and we can see our API reference again. Let's run the app, and we will go to Load Sample Input and click Large Example again. For our input, we applied throughput targets to forecasted demand that we just created with the OR Tools app to create this demand of workers. So now our input is worker demand and worker availability. You can see on the right we have a nice visualization of this input, and we will click Start Run. Great, we can see that the run is queued. We will give it just a moment and refresh to see that it is now succeeded. We can see our metadata here, and let's click on Results, and the result is an array of assigned shifts, worker ID, and the time associated. And on the right-hand side again, we have a nice visualization of the scheduled workers. The next step in linking our 3 logistics models together is to assign routes to drivers, and we're going to do that with the Next Move Routing app. So back in our Marketplace, we will click on Next Move Routing. We will clone the app. We will again give our new subscription app a name and click Create App. Great, we have our new app, and we can see our API reference again. Let's click Run App, and again we are going to load sample input. We'll start with distribution example day 1. Our input for the routing app are stops and the vehicles that are based on the drivers we just scheduled. Now we will click Start Run to run the Next Move Routing app. Here we can see that the status is running. We will just refresh quickly here and see that it has been successful. We will click on Result, and here we can see our routes on the map. We can see here that we are using 5 of the vehicles and drivers. To mimic more production runs, let's do 2 more runs in the app here. We'll do example day 2 I will go ahead and start that run, and we can take a look at the result. Here we are using 4 vehicles and drivers, and let's do one last run to mimic a production run. We'll do day 3, click start run. We can see that it's running. Quick refresh here and check out our results. And on example day 3, we can see that we used 4 vehicles and drivers. Let's come back to our farm share example that we discussed at the beginning. Our operators have told us that some of the drivers are not happy because we are scheduling more drivers than we're actually assigning to routes. And beyond that, they would also like to have routes that are more tightly clustered instead of having to drive across town. So we think that activating the cluster objective will give us what we need. It will penalize routes that are not tightly clustered, and subsequently we will have more compact routes that require more drivers. So we'd like to test this theory out. So first what we will do is go to our Next Move routing app, and we will go to Instances and create New Instance. And in this new instance, like we mentioned, we would like to activate our cluster objective. So we will name that appropriately here. We can add a description. We will add the latest version, and then add the cluster objective to our configuration options. We'll click Create Instance and see that it is listed here alongside our latest instance. Next, we are going to click into Experiments on the side here and click Input Sets. What we're doing now is creating a new input set, and this is used for historical testing that we're about to perform. So what we are going to do is create an input set based on the last 3 runs we did in the Next Move routing app. We will give the input set a name, a description, and then we will use create type based on time frame. And since we just made those runs, we can select the last 24 hours for those 3 runs. Great, so we've created a new input set to use in a historical test. We are going to create an acceptance test, and we can navigate to New Acceptance Test. And what this test will be looking at is comparing our current model that does not use the cluster objective with the new instance we just created that does use the cluster objective. So for our baseline instance, we'll click Latest, and for our candidate instance, we'll select Cluster Activated. We'll use our new input set we created. Now we will define the metrics that we want to see change. The first will be our number of activated vehicles. So that is a metric that we want to see increase with this test. And the second is we want to look at the overall value. So we expect that to go up as well. So now let's click Create and Run Acceptance Test. Okay, we can see that our acceptance test has kicked off, and we will go ahead and refresh to see our results. As we've refreshed, we can see both of our results have green check marks next to them. Our first is activated vehicles, and we can see that those are in the green there, meaning they have increased, which is what we expected. And same for the value. So we can tell by this that we have made the correct prediction, and from here we would probably tune those values to make them even closer to what we would like to see in our ideal state.